Today I am 31 weeks pregnant with my second child, so I thought that it was high time that I shared the story of my first childbirth experience. I gave birth back in 2022 for the first time, and overall I would say it was a wonderful experience. And there were a few crazy things that happened, but overall it was a very positive experience, and I am looking forward to giving birth again for the second time here in just a few weeks, which is hard to believe, but we're getting there really fast. Now, just a little bit of a backstory. I did want to have an at-home birth. I had been signed up with the midwifery, and we were going to go ahead with that home birth until I got diagnosed with lupus during my pregnancy. So things shifted, things changed, and I had to give birth in a hospital. But if I would have been able to, I would most certainly have liked to have given birth at home, but it just didn't work out that way, which was completely fine because my birthing experience was still very positive in the end. So before the actual day of my labor, I'm going to go back 2 days. So at my 37-week prenatal appointment, I asked to get a cervical sweep done. Because of my lupus diagnosis, I was told that I would have to be induced at 39 weeks. I asked them to push it off to 40 weeks as long as there was nothing wrong with me, and they agreed to that. So I wanted to get the ball moving naturally, and so I elected to do the cervical sweep. There was no pain associated with it, and it was very quick. It was uncomfortable, but that's to be expected with any kind of vaginal examination. Anyways, I got the cervical sweep done, I believe, on the morning of week 37. At that time, I was 4 centimeters dilated already, so my OB kind of laughed and was like, I think you're probably going to be going into labor here in a few days, if not today. So the next day, nothing happened. I think I might have lost my mucus plug. I can't 100% remember, but I do believe that might have happened the following day or the day that I got my cervical sweep done. And then it was the following day at 3:10 a.m. I get up to go use the bathroom, and I sit down and I hear an audible pop. And I'm thinking to myself, that's weird. I've been experiencing a lot of back cracking recently. Like maybe my back just popped because I sat down. Weird. Well, I started to notice some fluids leaking out of me, and I was like, I'm definitely not peeing right now. And so I said, that might have been my water breaking. And so I put on a pad because I was like, I really don't want to soak things. And I stood up and I could definitely feel more fluids coming out of me. And I was thinking, okay, I'm pretty sure at this point that my water has broken. So I went to our bedroom and I woke up my husband and I said, I believe my water just broke. And he immediately is completely alert and he's like, okay, should we go to the hospital? And I was like, well, I think I'm okay for right now. I'm not having serious contractions. I think we're okay to wait a little bit. So I told him to go back to sleep. And for the next hour or so, I walked around the house and I was getting the last of the things packed into our hospital bag and just kind of taking contractions as they came. They weren't that serious. They didn't really affect me. I didn't really have to stop to get through contraction, so I wasn't really concerned. And then at around 4 in the morning, I decided, you know what, I've got the rest of my hospital bag packed. I think it's time that I go lie down and try to get a little bit more rest before real labor begins. So I come back to the bedroom and I lay down, and as soon as I lay down, it's like, no, you are not allowed to lay down. So I'm like, okay, well, this is very uncomfortable. And immediately a contraction started that I was like, okay, I can't quite just walk through this contraction. I have to focus. And so I was thinking, I think it's probably time I got my husband up. So I got my husband up and we kind of did a few last minute things. I can't remember exactly what time we left the house. I'm pretty sure we got to the hospital at around 5 a.m. So we got checked in, and it was really funny because there was like one couple ahead of us who she was in labor, and then there was us, and then there was a couple behind us. It was like 3 couples all in a row came in at the same time to get registered to go up into labor and delivery. So it was just kind of funny how that happened. So after we got finished at the front desk, we went up to the maternity floor, and I waited in one of their waiting rooms. The doctor did a test on the fluids. They came back a little bit later and they were like, hey, we have to do another test. I don't remember exactly what the reason they had to retake the fluids test, but they had to retake it. But they came in at around 6 a.m. and they checked my cervix, and they said that I was still 4 centimeters dilated, which was what I was at my 37-week appointment, and that I believe I was 85% effaced. So I was getting there. So remember that this is around 6 a.m. Around 7 a.m., my husband, he was at the time in his internship for his education degree. So he had some paperwork that he had to drop off at the school that he was interning at. So at around 7, he left, and I told him, take your time, go shower, get ready for the day, whatever. And then I was laboring alone. One of the nurses came in to transfer me to a delivery room, and she asked me, she said, are you laboring alone today? And I said, no. I said, my husband is going to be back in a little bit. But then I was just thinking about those women who sometimes unfortunately have to labor alone, and I was just being so grateful that I have a husband who is there to support me. I admire the people who end up laboring alone because I hated every single second of it. I felt so alone, and I just kind of had to retreat into this part of my brain that was just like focusing on each contraction that came, but it felt very lonely. So for those of you ladies who have labored alone, you are strong women, and I greatly admire you. So I continued to labor alone for probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours before my husband came back. And when he did, that's when they began checking how far along I was dilated. At 9 a.m., I was 9 centimeters dilated. So going back to 6 a.m., I was 4 centimeters dilated. Now at 9 a.m., I am 9 centimeters dilated. So I was pretty surprised with how fast I was progressing, because when we originally went into labor, I was planning for like 24 hours of labor, because most of my friends had gone through extremely long labors. So that's what I was preparing myself for. And here I was already at 9 centimeters dilated, and I believe I was 100% effaced at that point. But anyways, during that time, I know my husband was back already at that point. One of the nurses came to me and she goes, so do you have your birthing plan? And I said, I gave it to you guys. You guys have my birthing plan. And she's like, oh, we can't find it. So they lost my birthing plan, which I was really upset about, because the thing is, I was progressing really well through labor and getting through those contractions very well, but I had to really just focus in on them, and I couldn't let anything distract me. So the fact that I knew that in a moment I might not be able to answer a question of what was on my birthing plan originally and what I wanted to do was frustrating to me, because I was like, you guys should have held on to that birthing plan. Why did you lose it? But anyways, in the moment, I didn't really care. In the moment, I was just working through contractions. So for this time around, I'm actually going to have a physical copy, and I'm going to have a copy on my phone and on my husband's phone, so that I make sure it does not get lost. So my husband, he's a bit of a jokester, and so he's making jokes and laughing with the nurses and all these kinds of things. And that's the way I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be lighthearted and us having a good time, but I was just kind of like zoned in on my contractions. I'm like, just let me get through this labor. I'm not really laughing at his jokes. I'm just focusing on my contractions. But around 10:15 is when I told the nurses that I was feeling pressure. And the nurses said, okay, well, we need to check you, make sure that you're fully dilated. So don't push, just lie on your back and we're gonna have to check you. Which I really, really disliked lying on my back, because when I would do that, the contractions were like 10 times worse than when the position that I was using was on my knees, and I would just kind of go up and down on my knees. It was way worse when I was lying down. And so I really wanted to keep all the time on my back as short as possible, because I was like, I can't stand this. Well, they checked me and they were like, oh, there's a head there. So they were like, okay, it's go time. We gotta push. So they grabbed me the bar, because I had mentioned that I did not want to give birth on my back, that I wanted to be in a squatting position or a kneeling position or something like that. And so as the nurse is trying to explain to me the different positions that I could be in to give birth, I'm just like, not really listening at all. Just being like, I just need to get through these contractions. So the two nurses that I had in the room with me, one was a regular nurse and the other was a student nurse. And when I said that I was feeling pressure and they checked me and baby was crowning, the nurse said to the student nurse, now because she doesn't have an epidural, we don't have to tell her when to push. Her body is going to know when to push. And so it was very interesting just overhearing that conversation. And so they set up the bar and I get into position. I was on my knees and I realized that I had forgotten to take my medications for the day, which is like my lupus medications and my prenatal vitamins and all that kind of stuff. And so in my delirious state, I thought that it would be a good idea to take my meds at that moment. One of them was my fish oil pill with the prenatal. So I took that and I'm in my pushing position, ready to go. And I'm feeling these contractions coming and they're getting very powerful. And at one point I was like, I'm gonna throw up. Because I would burp, and with the prenatal fish oil pills specifically, they are so bad for burping because you can taste the fish so clearly. Oh, so I was burping and I could taste the fish and I was like, I am literally going to throw up right now because I'm experiencing a contraction and I'm tasting this awful fish taste in my mouth. I can't do this. So I told them to get a bucket for me. Thankfully, I did not throw up. I thought I was going to, but I didn't. And then we were getting down to the active labor. So because there were so many other ladies giving birth that morning, the doctor wasn't actually available yet. So she finally got there and I was already pushing the baby out. But at one point, I just remember thinking to myself, this hurts so bad. I don't think I can do this. And I remember yelling out, I said, God, please help me. God, please help me. And thankfully the Lord did. He helped me push the baby out. But at one point I felt what I believe was a ring of fire and was me tearing. It's as if there was an open gash on your arm and you took your bare, dirty fingers and you put it directly on that open wound. That's exactly what it felt like, except down there in the nether regions. And I was in so much pain. I didn't think that I would be able to do it. During this point where I'm experiencing excruciating pain, I'm starting to hyperventilate. And the doctor is like, listen to me. Stop, listen to me. Are you listening to me? I was like, yes. And she said, I need you to breathe. And so there was a nurse on one side of me and my husband on the other side of me, and they were just telling me to breathe in, breathe out, you know, breathe in, breathe out. And that would really help to calm me down again. And I was able to push our baby girl out. And I immediately just kind of fell back onto the bed, and I kind of like forgot, you know, that there's a baby there. I was just kind of like in my own world of like, wow, that was exhausting. And so our baby girl was born at 10:39 a.m. And this was, I kid you not, less than 48 hours after I had gotten my cervical sweep at my 37-week appointment. So it was incredible how effectively the cervical sweep worked. So if you're wanting to progress your own labor naturally, perhaps quickly, maybe consider a cervical sweep. Anyways, after I delivered our baby, I was holding her, and I had my glasses off the whole entire time, so I couldn't really see the nurses' faces, nor was I really paying attention. The two nurses are standing next to the bed looking down at me, and I just look up at them, and I'm like, "You have beautiful faces." They just laughed, and my husband laughed, and we just kind of had a good chuckle about that. And then I was given Pitocin to deliver the placenta, and then I got stitched up, which was a very, very unpleasant experience. The numbing agency that they used with the needle, it went in some places that I'm like, do you have to stick the needle in there? It was extremely painful. But no, overall, it was a pretty great experience. There were just a few things that I wish would have been a little bit different. The first doctor who had come in to check the fluids that I was leaking, that was a male doctor, and I really would have preferred a female doctor through the whole thing. And then I had a student nurse who was also a male, who was standing over me as I was getting stitched up. And I was like, I'd really prefer not to have a male student staring at my torn hoo-ha right now, but I guess whatever. In that moment, you know, I'm holding my new baby and I'm just like, whatever, get done what you have to get done. I don't really care at this point. But overall, it was a great birthing experience, and I was really grateful. So it went from about 3:10 a.m. to 10:40 a.m. So like 6.5 hours-ish. So it was not long at all for a first birth experience, and it was unforgettable, that's for sure. I did not have any pain meds administered. I was hooked up to an IV. I had Group B strep that they had tested me for previously at a previous appointment. So I was getting the medication for that administered by IV. So they had me hooked up the whole entire time, but my labor was only 6.5 hours long, and I was only actually hooked up to the IV, I think, from around 6. So I actually only got one dose of the Group B strep disease medication. And so I'm reflecting in my birthing plan for this time around that I would like to be off of the IV stand occasionally. As well, I had the fetal monitoring going on the whole entire time. At one point, I was in the bath, and it was really annoying to me because it kept slipping out of place, and it was just uncomfortable. I was hooked up to the IV and all this kind of stuff. So those are some of the things that I learned from this time around that I am going to be asking to have changed this next time, when I'll be giving birth here in just a few weeks, which is crazy. So yeah, that was my birthing experience. Fantastic for a first time around. I'm hoping that my second birth will be just as easy, and hopefully just a few more things that I would like to happen, like my birthing plan not getting lost and having no male doctors or nurses and stuff like that. But for the most part, no, it was honestly so good. And I am very grateful to the doctors and nurses for respecting my wishes for a lot of the things that I did have in my birthing plan. And like I mentioned, I am looking forward to giving birth this second time here in just a few short weeks. But I would like to know some of your stories. So if you are going to be giving birth for the first time, let me know in the comment section below. Or if you have a crazy birth story that you want to share, or even just a regular birth story, tell me about it. I would love to hear from you. I am planning on filming a birthing story for my second after that happens. As well, I am thinking of actually making a video on my whole lupus diagnosis during my first pregnancy. If there's anything that you want to hear more specifically about my whole birthing experience with my first, please let me know in the comment section below and I will try to make another video for you on that.